So we're on our way to visit the Bardstown Bourbon Company, and we're going to meet our friend Mark there with the Bourbon Life podcast. And he said it was highly recommended that we don't miss this. So let's go check it out.
Let's go.
Okay, here we are. We've arrived at Bardstown Bourbon Company. This is the restaurant. And then you go right in here for the tours. Get to go in the secret spot.
So this is it, heaven on earth right here.
Nice.
Or that's the oldest bottle that we have. We call Cedar Brook.
Okay.
That one's from 1892.
Is it
So
really?
we have some genuine antiquities in here. These two shelves are kind of our pre-prohibition brands.
Okay.
So these are a lot of the really old bottles. This room is kind of our way to show our appreciation for history. As a brand, we're kind of newer into the industry. We didn't even get founded until 2014.
Okay.
We didn't start distilling until 2016. So this room is our way to kind of show our appreciation for those that were before us. Then on the table too, we have some bites and a nice cocktail. It's a ham salad, cheddar biscuit. There's some tomato jam, some fresh arugula. I hope they make that into a full-size sandwich at the restaurant soon. We didn't get founded until 2014, didn't start distilling until 2016. We were founded by a gentleman by the name of Peter Lofton. Essentially, we got founded because somebody told him no, he couldn't make his own custom product. He did pass away in 2019. We were owned by his estate up until 2022. And then we did get purchased by Pritzker Private Capital in 2022. We're on 100 acres right here, the distillery, bottling, and then 14 rick houses. That's what this 100 acres is. We went across the street and purchased 300 more acres to add that 15 additional rick houses. Yeah. We're one of the top 10 producers of whiskey by volume in the country. We can produce right under 10.5 million proof gallons per year at the moment. So as a brand, we're still growing. So I think it's a really exciting time for people to come see us right now because we really haven't hit the end of that growth. The coolest part about the room for me though, it's not just being able to look at all the stuff. You can actually, for a price, have an ounce or 2 ounce pour out of any of these bottles that you see. Some of these bottles are half full, half empty, however you want to look at it. That's because you can actually come in without any sort of reservation. You can literally just walk in off the street and not even know this is here, and you can try something from 1892. But once upon a time, specifically in the 60s and 70s, we think our collection's from 1969. Brands were having to put their products in decanters to get people to even notice that it was on the shelf. What was selling was your gin and your vodkas. Whiskey and bourbon, not so much. So it was literally a last-ditch marketing plea. Notice my product on the shelf. Okay. Once upon a time, all those chest pieces were full of product. That was literally like a last-ditch marketing plea. Please notice that this is on the shelf. I think it's kind of crazy you consider that once upon a time, that's what brands had to do, whereas nowadays, if somebody came out with something like that, I mean, it'd be gone in an hour.
Oh, yeah.
All those trains at the bottom, those are decanters too from Jim Beam.
At a premium.
There's a couple different animals and all kinds of different decanters if you look around. Yeah. It really was what brands had to do to get people to even notice that product was on the shelf. One of the main reasons that we have that collaborative distilling program and the ability to custom distill is that was the original business model. Peter Lofton saw that need on the Kentucky Bourbon Trail to have that fully customizable distilling experience. That's part of the reason why we've grown so much today as well. Typically what you see with newer distilleries is they come out with like a gin or a vodka. That's a quick way to crank a product off the still. You put it into a bottle that's ready to sell. Bourbon and whiskey, you're talking about a time period of 4 to 6 years where you're literally waiting to even be able to make any sort of revenue off of that product because you have to let it age and mature and get ready for bottling. But for 6 years as a company, what we were doing was we were blending and we were finishing in other spirits barrels. So these bottom 2 rows are a lot of our kind of frontline products at the beginning of the company. So a lot of these brands, they started at one distillery and then they've kind of been acquired by these bigger conglomerates. It's kind of like a big trading card game. So once you own the rights to that brand, if you're on that property, you can't call what you're distilling that product.
The library at Bardstown Bourbon Company was so cool. Just to go in and see all the vintage bottles and to know that you could actually taste from one of those bottles from the late 1800s, early 1900s, and just see what that's about.
And anybody can go in and see this. You just have to know that it's there and ask. And it's free to go in and look. and see all the vintage bottles. It's their way of paying homage to the past and the history of bourbon. But you can taste from any bottle for a price.
For a price, that's right. Some of the names I didn't even recognize, never heard of before. And there were a lot of different types of decanters also that were neat to see.
And we want to go back and do a tasting because we didn't do that this time.
Yeah, definitely have to make it back.
Yeah.
Trying to get a progression of what makes bourbon in here. So the boys are setting up their flights. They get distillate, that's what comes right off the still. Then they get maturate, something that's not quite done aging yet. We want them to see the progression of how bourbon develops over time. And then that third pour is one of our finished products, our premium blends called the Discovery Series. Big nod to transparency for us as a company. One of our core values is being transparent about what we put in our bottles. So that Rickhouse is kind of a nod to that transparency piece as well. We want to create some different flavor profiles. Our thinking is if we heat those barrels up right up front versus the ones behind them, we'll create a unique flavor profile. We can release maybe some small batches or single barrels right there from that warehouse.
So you just saw the normal tour tasting room, and now we're on our way to see what the rest is all about.
He did pass away in 2019, so we were owned by his estate up until 2022. Christopher Private Capital did purchase us in 2022. A little bit of Pete's story. Pete was an entrepreneur. His company was called BTI. That company ended up becoming Earthlink in the early 90s. So Earthlink was a major telecommunications company. It was essentially the only internet accessibility company when the internet first started up and coming. Looks like right now we're making our wheated bourbon. We're always going to put what batch we're going to be cooking, so right now we're making some of our own products. We're bringing in corn, wheat, and malted barley. Those numbers next to the grains are in reference to how many pounds of those grains we're going to bring in. So we had to start this cook by bringing in 12,585 pounds of corn. Luckily for us though, all we have to do is press the button on our computer. We run off of a state-of-the-art program in here called Ignition. So Ignition can tell us literally to the corn kernel exactly when we hit 12,585 pounds of corn. All those grains come towards us. If you look out here, see all those grain bins out there. That's where we're going to house all of our grains, our corn, our rye, our wheat, our malted barley. We send them above our heads and then into one of our 12,500 gallon mash cookers. We just want to cook those grains for about 2.5 to 3.5 hours and release all those starches and turn them into sugars because that's what we need to combine with yeast to make our alcohol. Through 13 small tubes in those big steel pipes. And at the same time, the mash gets injected through. There's cool running water on the outside. So this kind of works like a big radiator for your vehicle. This is happening in real time. Right where we were over there, it was so loud because we're pumping that mash through those cooling pipes and into this fermenter right now. 13,542 gallons, whereas those mash cookers are 12,500 gallons. We have to make the fermenters larger than the cookers because when we add the yeast, it's gonna make the mash rise and come back down. This one just got done being steam cleaned, so it's a little warm. We're constantly changing recipes, quite frankly. So we have stainless steel fermenters because it's really easy for us to tarp it, steam clean it, he sprays that hose, it's ready for the next cook. It's about 10 different yeast strains that we have contracts with right now from a company called Firm Solutions. That's what we use to kind of flavor mash.
Tastes like chicken.
You're gonna taste it.
Not
Give it a
really.
taste.
Tastes like 2-day-old
How's that
beer.
taste? Wasn't
Stale
very,
beer.
Yeah, it wasn't good.
But
Yeah, it tastes like 2-day-old beer.
2-day-old beer. Let me see.
We call it distillers beer. The beer is what we're going to start with, and the beer is what we're going to send down our column stills to begin to make that whiskey distillate. This is 16 fermenters. This is the new edition. It's only been up and running for about 6 months now. 8 in there, and then 8 where we started, that's 32. Outside is the additional stills and the old fermenter house of 16 additional, so that's 48 active fermenters as of today. Starches and sugars that we've created from the cook, and it's converting them into alcohol. The same time that process is happening, it's also putting off carbon dioxide. So if you ever get to a fermenter and it's a really heavy roll, it kind of gets hard to breathe around it because it's emitting so much carbon dioxide off the fermentation tank itself. It's the yeast eating the starches and sugars, converting them into alcohol, and then releasing carbon dioxide. But we're going to let the yeast do its thing for 3 days. After 3 days, we made that distiller's beer. There's one more spot that we're going to hit before we're ready to distill. Here's kind of more of what I was referring to. This one looks like it's boiling hot. It looks like it's at a rolling boil. You can put your hand on the side of the tank and feel it's not hot at all. And then if you want to, you can put your pinky in there and taste it. This one's probably about a day and a half into the process. You start to see that really heavy boil about right at the halfway point. Got some heat coming off the top too. That's just the carbon dioxide that's being emitted.
So Vendome Copper and Brass Works is one of the companies that makes most of the containers that they ferment and cook in the distillers.
But each one of the 32 fermenters in this building all get collected and funneled into this, which is a 16,000 gallon holding tank of beer. It's so hot because we need the heat to raise the proof of the alcohol. So the beer is going to be sent down these column stills, and you're going to start to see the grains hitting the window. The grains are getting filtered out by a series of 15 plates along the way. The beer falls down as a liquid, and then hot steam rises up from the bottom of the stills. That steam's going to meet the grains and strip the alcohol off of the grains and off of the liquid and turn that alcohol into a vapor. Then that vapor is going to eventually collect right above our heads. If you look up there, you can see 2 vertical copper pipes up there. Those are called condensers. Those condensers cool down the alcohol vapor, turn it into a liquid. Liquid's going to fall above our heads and then hit the left-hand side of this mechanism. It's called a tail box. Left-hand side is called low wine. That's the first round of distillate that we're going to produce. The low wine's coming in at about 120 proof. We send the low wine down below our feet into these 2 500-gallon doublers down here. It's going to raise the proof. It's going to heat it up so much that once again the alcohol becomes a vapor. Alcohol vapor is going to go through these copper pipes all the way back up. And it's going to settle once again in those vertical copper pipes, those condensers, where the exact same thing's going to happen. It's going to cool it down into a liquid. Liquid will fall above our heads, and then the liquid rests on this right-hand side. That's your high wine. Moonshine, White Dog, White Lightning, all the same terms. So that's coming off the still between 130 to 140 proof. We cannot put that into a barrel and call it bourbon. If we put that directly into a barrel, we would have to classify it as a whiskey. You cannot enter bourbon distillate into the barrel higher than 125 proof. So there's one more step for us to kind of add some water and bring the proof down to a level to where we can call it bourbon. That's where that cistern room comes into play.
So this is the high wine?
This is high wine. This is your Moonshine, your White Dog, your White Lightning. This is your finished whiskey distillate. It's not bourbon because it's too high of a proof. We have to drop that proof and get it ready to enter the barrel to call it bourbon at that point. You can't call it bourbon until you get it into that barrel and you achieve that proof of 125 or below. So this room is where we're going to change the proof of that high wine or finished whiskey distillate and turn it into bourbon. The high wine's going to run through these pipes above our heads and get sent over here into one of our cistern tanks. So the barrels start on the left-hand side, they come all the way down towards us, and then they collect right here in the middle and go underneath those 4 tubes. Once that cork is sealed, technically speaking, at that point, these barrels will be full of bourbon as long as we're meeting our majority corn mark and we distilled it here in the U.S., and that's a never before used charred oak container. Either the right-hand side or right down the middle line there, and then they'll roll right onto a self-loading trailer which will get hooked up to a semi-truck, and those trucks will then take the barrels to one of our now 16 active rick houses for storage. Technology, innovation inside, not much outside. It's the historical way of doing it. We're really relying on the climate to take care of the aging process. That's the centuries-old method that we haven't changed much. It kind of has a little bit of everything. We want to have the ability for somebody to come in and try whatever they want. It's not just our stuff at our restaurant bar. There's all kinds of different spirits, and there's a lot of bourbon up there. In the gift shop, the gift shop is where we have some of the brands that we've worked with. We've either distilled, bottled, or aged for these brands right here in the corner.
Any other cool stories up there?
The other one is that 5 Trail. That's with Coors, the Coors that we're all used to. That was their first introduction into the whiskey industry. What you see right now is
So we love the Rick House. It was so neat to go in there and see all the barrels at Bardstown Bourbon Company.
And we love the transparency, and they are trying to put that everywhere. Really be transparent with their operation, with the community, with their customers, and we really had a big respect for that. We really enjoyed the entire experience there.
Right. Every bottle has their own the mash bill on the side of the bottle, so it's real upfront and they don't hide anything. But we went into this Rick House and we were able to thieve from the barrels and do a tasting.
It was
And it was
incredible.
outstanding.
Yeah, the
Best
ambiance, the flavor, every bit of it was just incredible.
Yeah, so you definitely want to do the barrel thieving tour if you can.
Yes.
Those are the largest warehouses that the state will allow us to construct. Those back there can hold 58,800 barrels. We all love this rick house. I think this is a great spot for like a private event of some sort. The barrels that everybody sees, 110% authentic, all full of bourbon or whiskey. We're making whiskey too. But this one holds just over 30,000 barrels because of all the liquid in the barrels. It's kind of like heating or cooling a pool in here. It's going to take it a few days to catch up to exactly what's going on outside. No climate control in our warehouses.
Some people won't call that a rick house, they'll call it a warehouse.
Yeah, you could call it either one. Really, the term rick house, where it originates from is what a rick of wood is. So a rick of wood is a 4 by 8 foot space of wood. Yeah. So this section right here is a rick of wood. The first one that we're going to try, all of these that we're going to try are our product. We distilled them right here on property. This first one that we're going to try is a wheated bourbon. If you ever hear that term wheated bourbon or rye bourbon, really what it's referring to is what we consider to be the flavoring grain in that recipe. If you ever look at a bourbon mash bill, that's just another term for grain recipe. We're going to list those ingredients in order that they make up that recipe. So for bourbon, you always have to have majority corn in your recipe. If you don't, you can't call it bourbon, you got to call it whiskey. The second grain in the recipe is wheat, so that's why we're calling it a wheated bourbon. It's 68% corn, 20% wheat, and 12% malted barley. This one, we're going to put it in the barrel just like we talked about. We're going to enter the barrel at 120 proof as a company. The proof is going to fluctuate out here. It's going to fluctuate depending on when you have your evaporation. That evaporation is going to happen at all times of the year. It's evaporating right now while it's cold in here, and it's evaporating while it's hot. In the summer too. In the summer, it's going to be hot enough to evaporate water out of the barrel with it. So your proof is actually going to rise in the summer.
That's
so
crazy smooth.
Yeah, it's very good. If you ever have a bottle and it says barrel proof or cask strength and it's above that 125 proof point, they had to enter it into the barrel at 125 or below. But the aging process is where that fluctuation is going to occur. You can take it out of the barrel, and as long as it's 159.9 proof, you can call it bourbon. That's the max that you can get to. The Rick House barrel thieving. People can come out and do an experience where you're literally taking barrel-proof samples for your entire tour. You're going to have a barrel-proof sample of 3 different products, and then there's a little finished product at the end as well. called the rickhouse barrel thieving. One of the reasons why we don't have climate control is because we want as extremely hot and as extremely cold as we can get in these rickhouses, and we want everything in between. So when it gets hot in the summer, what happens is the wood expands and it literally breathes in the whiskey into the barrel. When it gets cold, like it is now, the wood is contracting and it's pushing it back out of the barrel. That breathing in and out of the barrel, that push and pull in and out of the barrel is what's responsible for 100% of that amber color. Without the barrel, you'd have a clear bourbon. It's 100% of that color is coming from the barrel, and about 60 to 80% of your final flavors are coming from the barrel too.
If you get really lucky to thieve, you get extra special stuff that you never see in a bottle.
It doesn't taste near the same.
And it doesn't taste nearly the same as what you get when this goes in a bottle.
Yeah, no way to substitute that flavor straight from the barrel.
Yeah, pretty good.
A lot of the times you're going to filter out that wood char that she's referring to. That wood char is adding some flavor. So when you strip out that wood char from that final product, you're actually stripping some proteins out. So you're going to change the flavor. The closest thing to a barrel pool is barrel strength bourbon out of the bottle, but it will not be exactly the same straight from the barrel.
So I have to say that one of my favorite, I loved every bit of it. I loved Bardstown, and it will be a must-go-to for us when we go. But don't go to Bardstown Distillery without checking out their restaurant and their bar.
Yes, we went there and had lunch, and it was delicious. They had some really unique menu items.
A great chef.
Yep. And their bar, they had a wall of bourbon like behind the bar, and they had some really good craft cocktails.
Oh, so
I
good.
think we had an old fashioned, and what was the other one we had?
I can't remember.
I don't know, but they were very good either way. So don't miss out on that bar experience in the restaurant.
Yeah, go check them out.
We did all kinds of fun things last year. There was kind of like a Cuban night. There was a fair food night when we had the Kentucky State Fair going on. I think there was like a lobster corn dog that we did.
Oh,
So
cool.
there's a lot of really fun different things that you can try on those patio nights.
Okay, so this is the Manhattan, and it's got that special cherry in it. And this is the old fashioned. It's got the special rind, orange rind in it. I'm gonna try the old fashioned.
That's the old
This
fashioned.
is the old fashioned.
Manhattan.
Got the Manhattan,
Old fashioned.
old fashioned. So cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
We love this place so much we had to come back for round 2. I got a neat Manhattan with that yummy cherry, and I had a bourbon margarita.
It's got Green River bourbon, apricot, cranberry syrup, lemon juice, and orange bitters.
And we're sharing this yummy chicken sandwich.
With
And that is with pimento cheese. This is a tip. They serve it without the ice, but you can request it over ice.